Chapter 10. Then my feet took off, and my legs went too, and my body was obliged to follow. Me with my hands and my mouth full of cress, and my throat too dry to swallow. Manoli's running song. To Manoli's intense relief, all Lord Grohe did want to talk about was the fire lizards, his in particular and in general. The four of them, Robinson, Sibel, Lord Grohe, and herself, sat at a table apart from the others, on one side of the square, each of them with a fire lizard. Manoli was torn between amusement and awe that she, the newest of apprentices, should be in such exalted company. Lord Grohe, for all his clipped speech and an amazing range of descriptive grimaces, was very easy to talk to, once she got over her initial nervousness about the fracas with Venus. She heard in detail about the hatching of Murga, smiled when Lord Grohe guffawed reminiscently over his early anxieties about her. "Could have used someone with your knowledge, girl." "You forget, sir, that my friends broke shell at about the same time Murga did. I wouldn't have been much help to you then." "You can be now, though. How do I go about teaching Murga to fetch and carry for me? Heard about your pipes." "She's just one. It took all 9 of mine to bring me the pipes. They're heavy." Manoli considered the problem, seeing the disappointment on Lord Grohe's features. For just Murga alone, it would have to be something light, like a message, and you'd have to want it very badly. It was, well, my feet were still hurt, and it was such a long walk to the cot. His eyes, which were a disconcertingly light brown, fixed on hers. "Gotta want it badly, huh?"
Can I have some peanut butter with me,
"Yeah. Don't know as I want anything badly." He gave a snort of laughter at her expression. "You want things badly when you're young, girl. When you're my age, you've learned how to plan." He winked at her. "Take the point, though, since Murga's a bundle of emotion, aren't you, pet?" He stroked her head with a remarkably tender touch for a big, heavy-fingered man. "Emotion. That's what they respond best to. Want's sort of an emotion, isn't it? If you want something bad enough." Huh. He laughed again, this time with an oblique look at the Harper. "Emotion, then, Harper. Not knowledge is what these little beasties communicate. Emotion, like Brecky's fear the other night. Hatching's emotional, too. And today," he turned his light eyes back to Manoli. "Today, that was all my fault, sir," Manoli said, grabbing at a remark of Peemer's for excuse. "My friend, Peemer, the little fellow," and Manoli measured Peemer's height from the ground with her free hand, "stumbled in the crowd. I was afraid he'd be trampled." "Was that what that was all about, Robinson?" asked Lord Grohe. "You never did explain." But Lord Grohe seemed more interested in the lack of wine in his cup.
Mom.
What?
Where's the peanut butter?
It's probably on the counter there.
Which
Robinson politely topped the cup from the wineskin on the table. "It never occurred to me, Lord Grohe," said Manoli with genuine contrition, "that I'd be alarming you or the Master Harper or Sibel." "The young of every kind tend to be easily alarmed," remarked the Harper, but Manoli could see the corners of his mouth twitching with amusement. "The problem will disappear with maturity." "And increases now with so many fire lizards about her," added Lord Grohe with a grunt. "How much more do you think they'll grow, girl, if yours are the same age as Murga?" He was frowning at Beauty and glancing back to Murga. "Miriam's 3 fire lizards at Bend and Weir were from the first clutch, weren't they? They're not more than a fingertip longer," said Manoli, eagerly seizing on the new topic. "They'd be older by several 7 days, I think." She glanced at the Master Harper, who nodded in confirmation. "When I first saw Fnor's queen, Grawl, I thought it was my Beauty." Beauty squeaked indignantly, her eyes whirling a little faster. "Only for a moment," Manoli told her in apology, and stroked Beauty's head, "and only because I didn't know the Weirs had also discovered the fire lizards." "Any notion how old they must be to mate?" asked Lord Grohe, scowling in hopes of a favorable answer. "Sir, I don't know. Tegelen, Monarch's rider, is going to keep a watch on the cave where my fire lizards hatched, to see if their queen will come back to clutch there again." "Cave? Thought fire lizards laid their eggs in sand on the beaches." Master Robinson indicated that she was to speak freely to the Lord Holder, so Manoli told him how she'd seen the fire lizard queen mating near the Dragonstones, how she'd happened to be back that way looking for spider claws. "Good eating, those," Lord Grohe agreed and gestured for her to get on with the tale, and helped the little fire lizard queen lift the eggs from the sea-threatened sand into the cave. "You wrote that song, didn't you?" Lord Grohy's frown was surprised and approving. The one about the fire lizard keeping the sea back with her wings. Liked that one. Write more like it. Easy to sing. Why didn't you tell me a girl wrote it, Robinson? His scowl was now accusatory. I didn't know it was Manoli at the time we circulated the song. Huh, forgot about that. Go on, girl. Did it happen just as you wrote the song? Yes, sir. How come you were there in the cave when they hatched? I was hunting spider claws and went farther down coast than I should have. Threadfall was due. I was caught out, and the only shelter I could think of was the cave where I'd put the fire lizard eggs. I arrived, with my sack of spider claws, just as the eggs began to break. That's how I impressed so many. I couldn't very well let them fly out into thread, and they were so hungry, just out of the shell. Lord Grohy grunted, sniffed, and mumbled to the effect that he'd had enough trouble keeping one fed, his compliments for handling 9. As if mention of food had penetrated their sleep, Keamy and Zare roused, creeling. I mean no discourtesy, Lord Grohy, said Master Robinson, rising as hastily as Sibel. Nonsense, don't go. They eat anything, anywhere. Lord Grohy swung his heavy torso about. You there, what's your name? And he waved impatiently at the wineman's apprentice, who came running. Bring a tray of those meat rolls from the stalls. A big tray, heaped. Enough to feed 2 hungry fire lizards and a couple of harpers. Never known a harper who wasn't hungry. Are you hungry, Harper girl? No, sir. Thank you, sir. Making a liar out of me, Harper girl. Bring back some bubbly pies, too, the Lord Holder roared after the departing apprentice. Hope he heard me. So you're the daughter to Yanis of Half-Circle Seahold. Manoli nodded acknowledgement of the relationship. Never been to Half-Circle. They brag about that cavern of theirs. Does it hold the fishing fleet? Yes, sir, it does. The biggest can sail in without unstepping the masts, except, of course, when the tides run exceptionally high. There's a rock shelf for repairs and careening, a section for building, as well as a very dry inside cave for storing wood. Hold above the docking cavern? Lord Grohy seemed dubious about the wisdom of that. Oh, no, sir. Half-Circle Seahold really is a half-circle. She cocked her thumb and curved her forefinger. This, and she angled her right hand to show the direction of the curve after squinting to see where the sun was. My thumb is the docking cavern, and this, and she pointed to the length of her forefinger, is the hold, the longer part of the half-circle. And then this much, and she touched the webbing, is sandy beach. They can draw dinghies up on it or gut fish, so nets and men sail there in fair weather. They? Asked Lord Grohy, his thick eyebrows rising in surprise. Yes, sir, they. I'm a harper now. Well said, Manoli, replied Lord Grohy, slapping his thigh with a crack that made Murga squeal in alarm. Girl or not, Robinson, you've a good one here. I approve. Thank you, Lord Grohy. I was confident you would, said the Master Harper with a slight smile, which he shared with Sibel before he nodded reassuringly at Manoli. Beauty chirped a question, which Lord Grohy's Murga answered in a sort of that's that tone. Cross-crafting works, Robinson. Think I'll have to spot a few more of my sons about. Seaholds, too. The notion of Venus and Half-Circle Seahold appealed to Manoli, though she didn't know if that was whom Lord Grohy had in mind. The slap of running feet and hoarse breathing interrupted the conversation as the apprentice lad, juggling 2 trays, all but slid the contents into the laps of those he served. As the new fire lizards were fed, Manoli saw that more and more people were filing into the central square, taking seats at tables and benches. At one end was a wooden platform. Now a group of harpers took their places and began to tune up. Immediately sets were formed for a call dance. A tall journeyman harper gave his tambourine a warning shake, and then called out the dance figures in a loud voice that carried above the music while his tambourine emphasized the step rhythm. Those watching on the sidelines clapped in time to the music, shouting good-natured encouragements to the dancers. To Manoli's surprise, Lord Grohy added a hearty smacking beat of his hands, stamping his feet and cheerfully grinning about at everyone. Once the music started, the square filled up, and still more benches were angled into any free space. Manoli saw colors of all the major crafts on journeymen and apprentices from the halls of the Fort Hold complex. Groups of men stood about, drinking wine and watching the dancing, their heavy boots and clean, though earth-stained trousers marking them as small holders in from neighboring farms for the rest day and a bit of trading at the gather. The womenfolk had congregated along one side of the square, chattering, tending smaller children, watching the dancing. When the sets changed, some of the holders dragged their giggling but willing women out to make up new groups as the musicians began another foot-tapping, hand-clapping tune. The third was a couple's dance, a wild gyration of swinging arms and skipping legs, an exercise that rendered every participant breathless and thirsty, to judge by the calls on the wine-man's lad when the dance ended. A change of harpers occurred now, the dance players giving up the platform to Brudigan and 3 of the older apprentices who ranged themselves slightly behind Brudigan. At his signal, they sang the song that Elgian had sung the night of his arrival at Half Circle Seahold. It was one Manoli had never had a chance to learn. She leaned forward, eager to catch every word and chord. On her shoulder, Beauty sat up, one forepaw lightly clasping Manoli's ear for balance. The little queen gave a trill, glancing inquiringly at Manoli. "Let her sing," said Master Robinson. Then he leaned forward. "But if you can keep the others where they are on the roofs, I think that might be wise." Manoli sent a firm command to her friends just as Murga rose to her haunches on Lord Grohy's shoulder and added her voice to Beauty's. As the fire lizard's descant rose above the harpers' voices, Manoli was conscious of being the focus of startled attention. Lord Grohy was beaming with pride, a smug smile on his face, the fingers of one hand drumming the beat on the table while he waved the other as if he were directing the extemporaneous chorus. Wild applause followed the song, and cries of, "The fire lizard song! Sing the queen's song! Does she know it? Fire lizard!" From the platform, Brudigan beckoned imperiously to Manoli. "Go on, girl, what's holding you back?" Lord Grohy flicked his fingers at her to obey the summons. "Want to hear you sing it. You wrote it. Ought to sing it. Shake yourself up, girl. Never heard of a harper not wanting to sing." Manoli appealed to Master Robinson, but the harper had a wicked twinkle in his eyes, despite the bland expression on his face. "You heard Lord Grohy, Manoli, and it's time you did a turn as a harper." She heard the emphasis on the last word. He rose, holding out his hand to her as if he knew very well how nervous she was. She'd no choice now, for to refuse would be to shame him, slight the hall, and annoy Lord Grohy. "I'll accompany you, Manoli, if I may. You do remember the new wording?" "What? Yeah?"
Mama let me have a bowl of peanut butter and Nutella, but I ate all the peanut butter first, and now it's just a bowl of Nutella.
You mean I let you do it?
Well, I mean, technically I let myself do it, but...
But, yes, I did let you do it, but why'd you say Mom, like you weren't talking... Oh, you were talking to the camera.
Yes.
Oh, my God. She's such a diva. Okay. "You do remember the new wording?" Robinson asked as he handed her up to the platform. She mumbled a hasty affirmative and then wondered if she did. She hadn't actually sung the new words, or the tune, for that matter, since she'd composed it so very long ago in the little hall in Half Circle Hold. But there was Brudigan, grinning a welcome, and gesturing to 2 guitar players to hand over their instruments to her and the master harper. Manoli turned and saw all the faces, all the people massed on each side of the square. A hush fell, and into that attentive silence the harper struck the first chords of her fire lizard song. Master Schonager's oft-repeated advice flashed through her mind. "Stand straight, take your breath into your guts, shoulders back, open your mouth, and sing." The little queen all golden flew hissing at the sea. To stop each wave her clutch to save, she ventured bravely. The applause that greeted the final verse of the song was so deafening that Beauty rose on wings, squealing with surprised alarm. Then the crowd laughed, and gradually the noise subsided. "Sing something from your sea-hold," said the master harper in her ear as he played a few idle chords, something these landsmen might not have heard. "You start, we'll follow." The crowd was noisy, and Manoli wondered how she'd be heard, but as soon as she struck the first notes, the gather quieted. She used the chorus for introduction, giving the master harper the chording and smiling, even as she sang, to find herself so well accompanied. "O wide sea, O sweet sea, forever be my lover. Fare me on your gentle wave, your wide bed over." Over the applause when she finished, she heard the master harper saying right in her ear, "I've never heard that one before. Good choice." He bowed, gestured for her to take a bow, and then motioned to the harpers waiting just beyond the platform to start the second dance group. Smiling and waving to various people, he led Manoli from the platform and back to the table where Lord Grohy was still enthusiastically clapping. Sibel grinned approvingly and rose to pass back to the master harper the very irritated little Zare. Manoli would have preferred to sit down and recover from the surprise of her first public appearance as a harper and the warmth of the reception, but Talmor came up. You've done your duty by craft hall now, Manoli. Let's dance! He spied Beauty on her shoulder. But could she sit this one out? No telling how she'd misconstrue my manhandling you in a dance. The Harpers had already struck a fast prancing tune. Will she stay with me? Asked Sibel, offering his arm in a padded sleeve. Zare didn't mind too much. Manoli coaxed Beauty, who chattered with annoyance but allowed herself to be transferred to Sibel's shoulder. Talmer, one arm about Manoli's waist, swung her expertly and quickly into the whirling dancers. After that, it seemed to Manoli that she'd no more time to take a quick sip of wine to moisten her parched throat and reassure Beauty before she was claimed by another partner. Viderian took her for the next set dance, with Talmor partnering Godiva in the same group. Then Brudigan caught her hand for a dance, and to her complete surprise, Domik after him. She acceded to Pemer's boast that he could dance as well as any journeyman and master, and wasn't he her best friend, despite a lack of hands in height and turns in age? Quartets of singers spelled the dance players until Manoli was certain that every single harper must have performed. Both of the songs that Patirian had sent to the harper were so frequently requested that Manoli writhed a bit with embarrassment until Sibel caught her eye, cocking an eyebrow and grinning at her discomfort. As full dark settled over Fort Hold, the crowd began to thin, for those with a distance to travel had to start their journeys home. Stalls were taken down and folded away. The grazing herd beasts and runners were captured and saddled to bear their owners down the roads from the hold. The wineman, since he kept a hold in the Fort Cliff, continued to serve those unwilling to end a gather. Pecking Manoli urgently on the cheek, Beauty reminded her that the fire lizards had politely waited for their supper long enough. Abashed at her thoughtlessness, Manoli rushed back to the Harper Hall. On the kitchen steps, Camo sat disconsolately, his thick arms cradling an enormous bowl of scraps, his eyes on the archway. The instant he caught sight of her and the fire lizards wheeling and diving as escort, he rose, calling to her. "Pretty's hungry? Pretty's very hungry?" "Camo waiting. Camo hungry too." From nowhere, Pemer appeared. "See, Camo, I told you she'd be back. I told you she'd want us to feed her fire lizards." Pemer stopped her breathless apologies as he handed out gobs of meat to his usual trio. "Told you gathers were fun, didn't I, Manoli? Told you it was about time you had some too. And you sang just great. You should always sing the fire lizard song. They loved it. And how come we don't know that sea song? It's got a great rhythm." "That's an old song." "I never heard it." Manoli laughed because Pemer sounded as testy as an old uncle instead of a half-grown boy. "Hope you know some more new ones like that, because I'm so bored with all the stuff I've heard since I was a babe. Hey, you have the last piece, Lazy. It's Mimic's turn. There, behave yourself." The hungry fire lizards made short work of Camo's bowl. Then Ranley leaned out of the dining room window, urging them to come and eat before the food was cleared away. There weren't many in the dining hall. Pemer had been right that they got scanty rations on a gather day, but the cheese, bread, and sweetings were all Manoli could eat. When the apprentice master marshaled the younger ones to the dormitory, Manoli quietly ascended the steps to her own room. The lilting strains of Still Another Dance Tune drifted on the night air. She had done her first turn as a harper, and done it well. She felt like a harper for the first time, as if she really did belong here in the hall. Lulled by the music and distant laughter, she fell asleep, the warm bodies of the fire lizards nestling against her.